Purpose is the differentiator. It connects a practice and a dentist to the community beyond dentistry and discounts. A charity or cause or foundation that's the answer to that question when someone says, hey, isn't that Dr. So-and-so? Oh yeah, they're the dentist that ...
Welcome to the Path to Owning It podcast by Provide, hosted by me, Corey Brown, a marketing leader at Provide with over a decade in the healthcare industry. If you found us, you're likely an aspiring or established healthcare practice owner looking for tools and advice to begin your journey or take your practice to new heights. And you're not alone. So to help you achieve your practice ownership dreams, twice monthly, we'll tap into our unparalleled network of industry experts who will join us on our quest to provide the answers to your most pressing questions. Like what you hear? Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen. Today, we are joined by Stephen Trutter, CEO at Ideal Practices. Throughout his 17 years in dentistry, Stephen has guided over 850 startup practices. He loves to understand what moves a dentist at his or her core to help build a custom strategy for the entire Ideal Practices team to implement. In addition to supporting aspiring dental practice owners, Stephen's other passion is the entire Ideal Practices team. He wants to provide the best leadership so each team member can level up and continue to deliver a truly elite and trusted experience for their clients and be proud of what they've accomplished. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We're very happy to have you.
Hey, Corey, great to be here. And thank you to you and the Provide team. Can't wait to share some great information for the associate community that's out there and the dental community as a whole. So I'm super pumped and glad you guys are doing this.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's clear you're an absolute pro in the startup practices. So I kind of want to start with that. Who is a good candidate to start a startup practice, in your opinion?
Number one, startups are not easy. I've been doing this for nearly 2 decades. The best candidates are those who have really defined exactly what they want to have, that they actually want to be a practice owner. Being an owner of any business is a hard path. And I think it takes the right associate that understands that they want to build something the way they want from day one. That's the best candidate for a startup. Like they know what they want. They know that they don't want to acquire somebody else's philosophies, somebody else's protocols, somebody else's team. And what they want to do is build something that they can have their own control and fulfillment in what they want to have in practice ownership. And that only path is a startup to be able to do it the way they want with the right team, the right systems from day one.
Yeah. And, many aspiring owners try to start a practice with kind of a trial and error method. And I know that you have a certain philosophy when it comes to starting a practice. So can you tell us a little bit about your 3 Ps of practice ownership?
That is kind of like the cornerstone or like the building blocks of building a practice. And those 3 Ps are this: it's practice, profits, and purpose. And you'll even see it. My hat's over here, but we even have that on our team swag and everything. That's like what we preach. It really is the basics for everything.
So let's focus on the practice first. I would assume that starts and begins with funding. What advice would you give an associate who is thinking of starting their own practice when it comes to securing financing?
That's a great question. I'll even go back like a notch and to say, hey, from a practice perspective, you don't need a consultant. You don't need a team to build a practice. If you're an associate listening here today, all you need are 4 walls and a roof and some chairs, and you have a practice. But you need to aspire beyond just opening. And that practice for us represents some of those foundational initial elements like funding, real estate, and demographics. And when it comes to funding, I think the best candidates need to make sure that they put themselves in the best financial position. You're talking with bankers, you're talking with lenders, and things like making sure that you have the right liquidity, making sure that you've made really good decisions. And from a funding perspective, what we're looking for is the lender that understands what a startup is, that we don't have to explain what an operatory is and how much it costs. And you guys always understand that as well. Like Provide always does a great job. But I think to make sure that they put themselves in the right position, we like to put them on a silver platter. And so that's kind of a methodology we use is like, we're going to put you on a silver platter to talk to lenders, to talk to banks, understanding their own personal financial statement, making sure that they have liquidity, making sure that they understand where are they at with their student loans and where those elements are, and understanding that they need to borrow funds from a lender. You may be sitting here listening going, I've got $400,000 in debt in student loans. Can I get a loan? The answer is yes. Depends on how they're structured. And understand that you're going to borrow $600,000-$700,000 or more to open a startup practice. Could you do it for less? Sure. But I always say, don't be the cheap dentist. Don't try to borrow the least, because then you'll end up being that cheap doctor on the street that you try to kind of shoehorn everything into a tight budget, which actually could constrict your growth as opposed to propel growth.
That's great advice. And after a dentist goes through this process with you, you get them on that silver platter. Let's say they get pre-qualified for financing. How do you advise on going about and finding the right space for their new practice?
Yeah, so kind of in our sequence of our 13 stages, which people can find on our website at idealpractices.com, we start with vision. So that first stage is really planning things out. And then we move into demographics and funding. And once we've established, do they have a path for funding, then we need to move into demographic information. And this is not going to be rooted in solely ratios. One of the things I say to everybody is don't chase a ratio. You're not making a 20 to 30 year decision based solely on a mathematical equation because there's your life that's wrapped up into this. So decisions like, what's your commute going to look like? Do you want to sit in traffic for an hour? How far do you want to drive from your home? These are some what we call desirable elements that are personal from a demographical perspective to at least identify the general region or marketplace that can fit from a demographical perspective. Now, we're not going to throw out the idea of hey, who cares about ratios? We're still going to look at those ratios and how those align to propel growth. But then the other part of it is this is where most people get tripped up. They chase this ratio in terms of demographics. And the last thing I would want to hear, and this has happened not to our clients, but it's happened to doctors, it's they end up in an area that they don't love their patients because they chased a number and not realizing oh, this area doesn't have what we call the ideal patient. So think about who your patients are. If you're listening today, think about those 3 patients that you love. Who are they? What do they get? What's their age? What's their general income? What kind of car do they drive? How do they get to your practice? And really think about who are the patients that you would love to see on a daily basis and find an area of abundance of those and then be able to find that slice of pie of that market.
So would you advise then kind of working backwards as opposed to chasing ratios? Find how far you want to go to work, where you want to be in your type of patients, and then kind of make that fit on the back end?
Yeah, we always say reverse engineer everything because we're trying to begin with the end in mind of everything of can you see yourself 5 years from today? Who are you seeing? Who do you love? What's your team comprised of? What's your ideal patient? And in all these elements and working your way back. And everything is tied to that initial vision. So demographics are a huge, huge part of that. And it's not just about reports on spreadsheets. It's truly understanding who you desire to see, but what are some personal elements? Because we've had clients have said, find me the best area. And it's here's where it's at. And it's well, I don't want to be there. Why not? My wife doesn't want to live here. So there's a personal element schools for your kids, climate, all these things are part of a decision of demographics. So if someone says the ratios are great, dig deeper, understand what those ratios mean. And also understand, even if an area has tight ratios, who is your competition? Are you a specialist? Do you understand what those different ratios mean to you? Are there older dentists there that don't have a marketing strategy? All these things are a part of wrapped up into demographics. So you can't make a simple decision on ratios mean good. You need to find what those mean to you.
Yeah. And let's say that we found the space based on the demographics and where we want to be. We have our ideal patients, right? How do we know how much space we're actually looking for?
In 18 years, no doctor I've ever worked with has ever come to me and said, you know what, Stephen? I wish I took less space. No one has ever said that, ever. So it's always about finding the balance. And that's a word that we use with our clients, balance. Finding the balance of making sure that you find a space that you can grow into that doesn't constrict growth while balancing that with your available funding and making sure that you don't kill yourself from day one from a cash flow perspective. So again, it's going to come down to marketplaces as well. New York City is going to have a different set of circumstances and parameters of defining real estate as opposed to Columbus, Ohio. It's a huge different marketplace. And so that's how we customize everything. Mike, who's one of our directors of consulting, and Kyle, one of our senior advisors, guides our clients in that real estate process. And so it's not just about chasing real estate or a street corner. It's really a process of looking at the economics. How does the space fit into attracting your patients from that area that we've identified? Because sometimes the real estate might not be in the middle of where you've identified your demographics. Think about how people commute. We may need to be a town over or a 3 exits north in order to attract that patient base that's traveling a certain way within the area. So the other part of it is X doesn't mark the spot. Just because demographics says this is great doesn't mean, oh, I place my practice in the middle of that. Not necessarily. In real estate, the biggest definer is time for a process.
Yeah.
You have to be patient with it. It's a tough market right now. It's been a tougher market in terms of commercial real estate. And so finding that right real estate factors in size, factors in economics in relation to demographics and everything.
Yeah. Since you've seen so many startup practices, tell me, I'm curious, what are some other common pitfalls that you see first-time owners kind of fall into regarding their real estate?
Two things. Number one, they chase real estate before they understand the opportunity. So they almost place like the real estate above, like, I want to find a beautiful building on a street corner, as opposed to, is this area good for me from a demographical perspective? When you do that first, and then what happens is you're chasing real estate, you're not chasing opportunity for growth. The other part of it is, and this is something I always ask clients at our course, is I have an oath, and the oath is this. Please repeat after me. I will not call the phone number on the real estate sign. Don't do it, folks. If somebody told you call the real estate sign, you're going to get a better deal. No, we call it the tale of two deals. The one where you're properly represented and the one where you come in by yourself. When you come in by yourself, they're like, oh, cool. Here's your deal. Here's what that looks like when you're properly represented. Then it's like, oh, wait a minute. We have a different set of circumstances for you. So don't chase real estate, number one. And number two, don't go in it by yourself. You're not going to get a better deal. You're going to get a worse deal. This real estate is the biggest decision that you'll make in your career. And you have to get it right, because this could affect how you even sell or transition your practice later. A bad lease can actually prevent you from selling a practice or be the impedance for you to sell your practice in the future. So don't call the sign, please, everybody.
As a former real estate agent, I can attest to that.
Not being represented, it's just tossing your money away.
Yeah, we say time and time again the importance of having the right people on your team, right? Thanks for reiterating that. You know, Stephen, we've talked a lot about the first part of your 3 Ps of practice ownership philosophy, and in just a few, we'll dive into profits and purpose and what that can mean for your business. More with Stephen right after this. Ready to take your practice to the next level? Meet the Provide Card, the credit card built specifically for healthcare practice owners. Available in addition to your Provide practice loan, with the Provide Card, you'll be transported to a world of new opportunities for your practice, where you can access the spending power you need to build your legacy. You can earn rewards on all purchases, all the time, with no rotating categories and no point expiration. At Provide, we're creating the future of personalized banking for healthcare practice owners. To learn how to apply for the card that makes your purchases go the extra mile, contact your Provide representative or visit getprovide.com/providecard for more information, including rewards terms and conditions. I'm Corey Brown, and this is Provide's The Path to Owning It podcast. We're back with Stephen Trutter, CEO at Ideal Practices, to learn more about his 3 Ps of practice ownership. Stephen, after years of being an associate, many dentists, they know clinical dentistry, but they don't have usually too much of a taste for what it takes to actually run the business. How do partners like Ideal Practices help up an associate's game when it comes to business acumen? I would assume this is where your second P, profits, comes into play.
It does. Absolutely, Corey. Yeah, great question. If you imagine everybody kind of like a stair step, you got practice. Like we've defined area, we've defined marketplace. Now that second step up is profits. I'm not talking about having the most profitable practice, but you have to have profits. How do you build a profitable practice? Systems, protocol, marketing. And that's the big element. And there's a lot of muscle groups that a lot of you haven't used before, which is like making connections in the community, building a referral network, social media, and those elements that are going to be important from a marketing perspective. And that's what we use in our team. We have our Startup MBA team, and that Startup MBA team is comprised of a number of advisors with years and years of experience on hiring strategies, leadership, developing your new patient protocols, making sure that you understand how to navigate insurances, how to actually run a business. None of us on my team are going to make them better clinicians, despite the fact that I have a biology degree. True story. I know nothing about clinical dentistry. I'm here to help you become entrepreneurs. You're running a business. A dental practice is that. And the big part of this is marketing. How are you going to get patients through the door? Now, everyone's going to ask questions like, what's the best thing for marketing? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's all encompassing. It's not just a website. It's not just about if you're doing direct mail or Google Ads. It's about like having a true strategy and a collection of tactics, not just like one thing that worked for somebody in one marketplace. But you have to have a marketing strategy because sales cures all ails. It really does. In any business, the more sales, the better everyone feels. You have patients from day one. And by the way, your patients have to be there from day one. You can't open your doors and go, cool. Also, the other part of it is your marketing strategy starts months in advance. And I'm not saying like you're sending out elements. What I mean is you have a strategy that builds up to this. I see this on some of the social media, some of these groups where people are like 3-4 weeks out from opening and they're going, hey, everybody, what's everybody doing for marketing? That's a question 6 months ago. where you're building up marketing like you're going to launch something. So make sure you have systems in place. Make sure you have protocols, financial guidelines, making sure that you have, and your team has an understanding of like, what is the culture and behavior that we're going to have, and your team has clear goals, and making sure that you have your insurances are credentialed, and making sure you have a marketing strategy that works to drive patients to your door from day one.
Yeah. I've worked with dentists for many years prior to this, and a lot usually have that kind of build it and they will come mentality. I have a feeling that you have a lot to say about that.
I wish it was the case.
Yeah.
The field of dreams doesn't really help of like, if you build it, they will come. No, not necessarily. Every market is going to be competitive, and understand that marketing is a science. What's everybody else doing? You have to understand, what is everybody else marketing towards? If you want to say, hey, I want to market implants as a startup, you're going to go into a marketplace. For example, if you say, I want to do implants, you're not going to outspend people in that marketplace as a startup. You have to find marketing channels. Ground marketing is key. That's what fuels growth, because things like SEO and buzzwords like that, those things don't happen from day one. Those take time. So a marketing agent or marketing agency is a part of a marketing strategy. They're not the strategy. And I work with some great marketing agencies. These things take time. Google Ads, SEO, are long-range strategies. What are you doing to get boots on the ground from day one to make connections in the community to drive patients to your door?
Working with so many startups, what do you find the most successful startups out of those 850 we mentioned do to become profitable quickly?
It's having an intense focus on marketing, but getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. They've never been a marketer before. They've never done social media before. And it takes 1 or 2 posts. You don't have to be perfect. And I think dentists live in a world of perfection. Most of you do, because your world is measured in millimeters. But this is about action, not perfection when it comes to marketing. Take action. And those are our best clients, implemented our strategies the best, and they took action on marketing before the doors open. Our best clients, their schedules are filled weeks in advance. They know day one, they've got patients. Those are the best success stories. It's about taking action.
That's such great advice. Thank you. Let's dive into the final P, purpose. Can you elaborate on what this philosophy means to you?
This is probably my favorite one. Purpose is the differentiator. And here's what it is. It connects a practice and a dentist to the community beyond dentistry and discounts. Every one of our clients has some sort of give strategy, whether that's a charity or a cause or a foundation that they genuinely and authentically connect with. It's the answer to that question when someone says, hey, isn't that Dr. So-and-so? Oh yeah, they're the dentist that ... And this could be everything from human trafficking. It could be rescue animals. One of our dentists, Dr. Andrew, he's my own dentist. He and his wife, they focus on rescue animals, rescue dogs, because that's what they had. One of our clients, she has a mountain bike trail named after her practice. She partnered with a mountain bike trail organization that helped develop and maintain mountain bike trails in her area in Colorado. Think about this. This non-for-profit organization ended up inviting its entire membership of over 1,000 members to her grand opening. Think about what that does to connect in the community. This is not a gimmick. This is not just like an Instagram post. This is not just something you splash on a website, because dentists, they're caregivers. It's dental care. And so that purpose is the connector. It shows you who you are as values, not just because of your discounts. And it's a rallying for a team to build great team synergy. Think about maybe something that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be rooted in dentistry, but the purpose, man, that's an icing on the cake. That's that third step. It's like practice, profits, purpose. What are you doing this for? What is your why? What is the end game? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to impact your community on a broader scale? And I tell you, what will happen is you'll find the right people to work for you because they're attracted to you because of your values. And you'll have patients that also look at that and say, wow, that is something that is purposeful. They're a part of what you're doing to maybe enhance something in the community.
Yeah, that's great advice. What if somebody is ready to start their own practice, but they don't really have a strong vision or purpose in mind now? Is this something that they can grow into, or is this something you'd recommend that they have from day one?
It's something that we extract through our vision call process. Our vision call process is our initial phase where we talk for 2.5 hours, developing these elements and pre-planning these elements. And most people don't come in with that idea of they know what they want to do, but whether they heard a podcast or they've read my book, things like that, they understand like this is a concept. Some of them have it in the back of their mind. They may not know how to implement it, and that's cool. But they don't need to have vision from day one. We develop it. I think if they've never worked anywhere before, that's a tough thing to define who their patients are and who they love, because then it's like, what are we aiming towards? But I think if they have the idea of I'm aiming towards a vision, it's great. Does it have to be pre-planned? No. That's what our job is, to help extract that from what they want with what we know will work for a startup.
Yeah. And how important is it to have that boots on the ground mentality and getting really well known and liked in your community versus your local competition?
It's huge. Whether it's connections with local businesses, whether it's connection with local communities or your chamber of commerce, it's huge because it separates you from other providers. And it really shows who you are to make those connections. Whether it's a small community or a big community, you have to be able to take steps. You have to be able to go out there. And for those who are saying, oh man, I'm shy or things like that, you talk with probably new people every day in front of you that sits in a dental chair and you have a conversation. It's about making connections and having conversations as a human being and always looking at it through the lens of what can I do to help another business? Don't go in and saying, oh, how am I going to get patients from this person? Going into and saying, how does this relationship, how can this be beneficial for both? How can this be collaborative? Whether that's other medical physicians or providers or local area businesses, get out there, make those connections, do events, be a part of events, be active participants in events, do your own events as well to really put on stage that who you are, put it out there.
Stephen, we've talked a lot today about many different facets of starting your own practice, and I'm sure we could go on for another hour. But if you had to pick just one thing you've mentioned today, or maybe you haven't mentioned today, that you really want our listeners to take with them, what would that be?
I think it would be the purpose. Think beyond just opening your doors. Think beyond profits. Think about what is the bigger purpose for this, because when you aim there, you're able to really connect well within the community and really think about like, what is the purpose of this practice? Maybe what is your legacy? What are you trying to do? What do you want to enhance within the community? It doesn't have to be giving everything away, but really think about what is the bigger purpose of what you're aiming towards. That will help you really define your long-term legacy, which then builds back to now we can start at funding and real estate and demographics. It all just goes back to that vision. And then all these steps have all that wrapped up into it. Your purpose is wrapped up into every single phase of this process.
And, speaking of purpose, Ideal Practices has their own purpose as well. Can you tell us about your global entrepreneurialism initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. We call it 4,000 by 2024. Give is one of our core values at Ideal Practices. We have a partnership with an organization that provides microfunding in third world countries. These are areas of the world, Corey, where traditional funding doesn't exist, where this impact is huge, where people can get small loans to do things, to get out of human trafficking, to get out of destitution. Our original initiative was 2,000 by 2021. So we wanted to fund 2,000 businesses by 2021. Well, we blew it out of the water. So now it's 4,000 by 2024. We're at 3,600. I can't remember where we're at. So I think the next one is 8,000 by 2028. I think that's going to be the next one. So our team has 4,000 by 2024 on their sleeves, on our shirts. If you think about 4,000 businesses, think about the other people that are impacted by those businesses in areas like Central Africa, Central America. It literally will be impactful to hundreds of thousands of people. So that is something that we are truly passionate about here.
That's fantastic. I mean, the impact that you have is just unreal. So
thank you.
Thank you for doing that. For those that are listening who'd like to learn more about working with you and your team at Ideal Practices, how can they contact you?
Yeah, the best way is go to our website at idealpractices.com. And I would also say, for those that are listening, if you want to pick up a free copy of our book, email me at Stephen, Stephen, at idealpractices.com and say, provide free book in the subject. I'll make sure that we get books out to everybody. This is the Startup Dentist book. You can find this at www.startupdentistbook.com. It's a mouthful, the startupdentistbook.com. It's a bestseller. It goes through our 13 stages, talks about the 3 Ps, and really unwraps every single stage of a startup. Great starting point for those who are wanting to take the leap, not quite sure where to begin. Before you call a sign, before you look at anything, before you even apply for financing, get a copy of the book and it will give you some really great stepping stones of moving forward.
Stephen, thanks for that offer. And just thank you for sharing your startup philosophy and all your expertise. You've really given our listeners just a lot to consider. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate you and Provide for making this happen. Thank you for being able to share this information to help grow our community from a dental perspective. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Because you've listened to this whole episode, we assume you were entertained, or at the very least, learned something new. If so, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a topic you'd like discussed in a future episode? Drop us a line in the comments section or send us a message on social media. If you're ready to take your practice ownership dreams into your own hands, be sure to visit getprovide.com to pre-qualify and browse our practice marketplace, or check out our news page for more helpful resources. The Path to Owning It is brought to you by the team at Provide, and it's produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses. PodCampMedia.com. Producer Dusty Weiss, editor Will Henry. For Provide, I'm Corey Brown. Thanks for being on the journey with us.
Provide is a division of Fifth Third Bank, National Association. All opinions expressed by the participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Provide, its affiliates, or Fifth Third Bank. The participants' opinions are based on information they consider reliable, but neither Provide, its affiliates, nor Fifth Third Bank warrant its completeness or accuracy and should not be relied upon as such. This content is for informational purposes and does not constitute the rendering of legal, accounting, tax, or investment advice or other professional services by Provide or any of its affiliates. Please consult with appropriate professionals related to your individual circumstances. All lending is subject to review and approval.